There's an invisible force silently dismantling the pillars of our civilization, and you probably carry it within you without even realizing it. It's a force so subtle it disguises itself as virtue, so powerful it has conquered brilliant minds throughout history, and so dangerous it can turn entire societies to ash. This force has a name: blind faith. When we talk about blind faith, we're not just talking about religious dogma, though that's certainly part of the problem. We're talking about something much broader and more insidious: the human tendency to accept truths without question, to follow authorities without reflection, to embrace ideologies without critical examination. It's blind faith in science when it becomes scientism. It's blind faith in politics when it becomes fanaticism. It's blind faith in technology when it becomes dependency. It's blind faith in ourselves when it becomes arrogance. Look around. We live in an age where people choose their truths like they choose their clothes, based on what makes them feel good, what confirms their biases, what keeps them safe in their comfort bubbles. How often do you see someone genuinely changing their mind after hearing a contrary argument? How often have you done it yourself? History is filled with devastating examples of what happens when blind faith takes hold. The Roman Empire, which lasted 1,000 years, crumbled in part because its elites became blind to the changing world. The Middle Ages dragged on for centuries because questioning certain authorities was heresy. The 20th century gave us two terrifying examples: Nazism and Stalinist communism, both fueled by blind faith in ideologies that promised heaven on earth. But here's what haunts me most. Have we learned from these mistakes, or have we simply traded old forms of blind faith for new, more sophisticated versions? Because if we look honestly at today's world, we'll find the same dynamics operating on a global scale, just wearing different clothes. Blind faith isn't just an individual problem. It's a civilizational cancer. It prevents us from adapting, from evolving, from facing the real challenges of our time. And perhaps most dangerous of all, it makes us believe we're wiser than we actually are. But why are we so vulnerable to it? Why does our mind, this extraordinary machine, capable of creating art, science, and philosophy, also prove so prone to surrendering to uncritical thinking? The answer lies in one of the most painful truths about the human condition. We are afraid. Afraid of uncertainty, afraid of complexity, afraid of being wrong, afraid of being alone. Blind faith is, at its core, a psychological defense mechanism. It offers us certainty in an uncertain world, simplicity in a complex universe, belonging in an existence that can feel lonely. Think about the last time you deeply questioned a fundamental belief of yours. Do you remember the feeling? That visceral discomfort, that sensation of the ground moving beneath your feet? That voice in your head saying, maybe it's better not to think about this? That's what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, and it's one of the most uncomfortable experiences a human being can have. It's so much easier to accept a ready-made answer than to live with difficult questions. It's so much more comfortable to follow an authority than to take responsibility for thinking for yourself. It's so much safer to stay in an ideological tribe than to risk ostracism for having a different opinion. I get it. We've all been there. I've caught myself defending positions that deep down I knew I hadn't examined adequately. I've felt the relief of finding a simple explanation for a complex problem, even knowing that reality is rarely simple. I've experienced the comfort of belonging to a group that thought exactly like me. But here's what I discovered: that comfort comes with a price, and the price is our own freedom. Because when we stop questioning, when we stop doubting, when we stop thinking critically, we're no longer free. We're just parrots repeating ideas that others planted in our minds. If this idea has already resonated with you, imagine what's coming next. Subscribe so you don't miss this journey. because what I'm about to share could completely change how you see the world. True wisdom isn't about having all the answers, but about asking the right questions. And the most important question we can ask is this: how do I know what I believe is true? Not, why do I believe this, or who told me this, but how can I verify this independently? This is the essence of critical thinking, and it's our main weapon against blind faith. But critical thinking doesn't mean being skeptical about everything. That would just be another form of dogmatism. It means developing the ability to evaluate evidence, to recognize logical fallacies, to distinguish between correlation and causation, to accept that we might be wrong. The great philosophers of antiquity already knew this. Socrates said, "I know that I know nothing." Not because he was ignorant, but because he recognized that true wisdom begins with intellectual humility. Descartes taught us to doubt everything until we find something we cannot doubt. The scientific method, one of humanity's greatest inventions, is based entirely on the premise that our theories might be wrong and need constant testing. But how do we apply this in practice? How do we protect ourselves from blind faith without falling into extreme relativism or paralyzing skepticism? First, cultivate intellectual curiosity. When someone presents an idea, your first reaction should be, "Interesting. How did you reach that conclusion?" instead of, "I agree" or "I disagree. Second, actively seek different perspectives. If you only read authors who confirm your beliefs, you're not educating yourself. You're indoctrinating yourself. Third, learn to distinguish between what you know and what you believe. Knowledge requires evidence. Belief can exist without it. Fourth, and perhaps most important, learn to live with uncertainty. Life is fundamentally uncertain, and pretending it isn't only makes us more vulnerable when reality finally hits us. Fifth, especially question ideas that make you feel superior or special. These are the most dangerous because they appeal to our ego, but there's an even deeper secret that few people know. The real antidote to blind faith isn't more knowledge, it's more wisdom. And wisdom is the ability to recognize the limits of our knowledge. It's the humility to admit that the universe is far more complex than any belief system can capture. It's the courage to live in the tension between certainty and doubt. Here's the revelation that changed my life. Blind faith is not the opposite of doubt. It's the opposite of genuine faith. Genuine faith is the ability to act based on our best judgments, knowing we might be wrong. Blind faith is the refusal to admit that possibility. A scientist who follows evidence wherever it leads, even when it contradicts their favorite theories, demonstrates genuine faith. A believer who questions their own interpretations of Scripture to better understand divine will demonstrates genuine faith. A citizen who criticizes their own political party when it acts against its principles demonstrates genuine faith. But here's the most beautiful paradox. When we stop being afraid of being wrong, we become more likely to be right. When we stop defending our positions at any cost, our positions become more defensible. When we stop pretending to have absolute certainty, we become more trustworthy. This is the difference between a civilization that flourishes and one that collapses. Civilizations that encourage questioning, that tolerate dissent, that celebrate diversity of thought, these civilizations adapt and survive. Civilizations that punish heresy, that demand conformity, that turn ideologies into dogmas, these civilizations stagnate and die. So here's the choice each of us faces every day. Will we be comfortable slaves to our certainties or uncomfortable pioneers of truth? Will we contribute to our civilization's collapse through our intellectual complacency, or will we be part of the solution through our courage to question? Blind faith promises us security, but delivers stagnation. Critical thinking promises us uncertainty, but delivers growth. I know which one I choose. Because in the end, the only thing we can be certain of is that absolute certainty is an illusion. And paradoxically, accepting this uncertainty is what frees us to seek truth genuinely, without fear, without dogma, without blind faith. The future of our civilization doesn't depend on having all the right answers. It depends on our courage to keep asking the right questions. If this video made you question something you accepted without thinking, mission accomplished. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message and subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of discovery. Because the world needs more people willing to think critically and fewer people willing to accept ready-made truths. The revolution our civilization needs doesn't happen in the streets. It happens in the mind. And it starts now, with you.